Hey guys, my name is Jason. Today we're going to case a window. First thing we need to do is find out how much material we need. So we're going to get the width of this window. The width of this window is 35 1/4. So when I make this window, I want to have an 1/8 inch on either side of wiggle room to play with to make sure it's perfectly straight and it fits in and all that good stuff. So we have 35 1/4 on the width, and I'll check it up here as well just to make sure it's the same. We're actually about 35 1/8 up here. So when we make the window, we'll probably make it right at 35 or just a little bit short. And then the height, we're at 36 3/8. And 36 3/8 over here, so we'll probably make that 36 1/8. Again, just to give us wiggle room to make it perfectly straight and everything. Our depth goes from 6 inches in the deep spots to about 5 3/4. So when we make the actual casing, the part that's going to rest in here, we'll probably make that at about 5 5/8, 5 1/2. That way, we just have a small gap in the back that we can fill in afterwards. It'll be flush to the wall. And what we're going to do is we're going to build our casing outside of the window. We're actually going to get the trim on it as well, and then put it in as one unit. It's I found it to be a lot easier that way. When the walls are kind of wonky, the trim won't sit flush, and then it's harder to get good miters. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to run to Home Depot now, grab a couple things, and be right back. So we're going to measure the width. We'll start down here. I'm not measuring at the drywall because I can trim that back a little. I'm measuring, trying to get to the wood. We're at about 35 1/4, maybe a little bit over. And then up here, I'm going to measure in a few spots. We're probably about the same once that drywall is out of our way. It's only just sticking over a tiny bit. Here, about the same, just under 35 1/4. So when we make our width, we're going to cut it to 35 inches even, and that'll give me 1/8 of an inch for wiggle room on either side to make sure everything is nice and square. Just in case this opening is off a touch, that'll help me adjust that. The height down here, just under 36 1/2. Same over here, right at 36 1/2, so we'll probably make that 36 1/4. And you can check to see if it's square by getting right in on the corner. I'm actually going to put it up here in the center, measure across, right about 50 1/4 if we're holding this at a right angle. It's not really about the measurement, it's just to see consistency in the measurement. I'm not trying to get the exact number. So we'll put it up here at 45 as well. Go this way. 50 1/4, so it's pretty darn square. 1/8 of an inch all the way around will be plenty to make sure that's in nice and straight. All right. When I buy this finger joint pine, when I'm cutting it, I always like to get rid of the factory edge to make sure I have a nice square edge. So I cut it off first, and then I do my measuring from there. We are doing 36 3/8. The reason I use a square, you don't really have to use a square if you have a miter saw, but it's easy for these things to get knocked off. And when I put my blade down, I can tell if it's straight with my line or not. So if my blade isn't exact with my line, I know something's not right. Either the saw's off a little bit or my line's off, and then I can fix it before I mess up the cut. this one. Cut it, right? So we're gonna rip these boards down to 5.5 inches, or what they say 5.5 large, so it'll be just over 5.5 inches. I can put it on 5.5 here, doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna be exactly 5.5 here, especially if this little piece here hasn't been calibrated. You wanna measure, come over here and look, you wanna measure to the widest part of your tooth on here from your fence, and you want that to be rather than measuring to the flat part of the blade, because the widest part of the tooth is where it's actually cutting. So right there is where we want it, and that'll give us plenty of wiggle room all the way around the window. Lock that in, and we're ready to cut. Decide which side we want to keep. Get rid of this side. Here we go. That's what we would call 5.5 large. It's really a 16th fast, so 5 9/16, but most people just say 5.5 large. Yeah.
Go.
So something I forgot to mention inside, I actually just forgot about it, is on my side pieces that are going vertically, because you have 2 horizontal pieces in between, you have to take the thickness of the boards out of your measurement. They're 3/4 inch boards, they're 1x6, so it's the actual thickness is 3/4, so we're going to take 1.5 off these boards from our overall window dimension, and then they'll fit in perfect. So come down here, just mark off 1.5. Let's go this way. A little easier to hold on to. Whoops. Forgot to plug her in. Yeah. All right, take 2. Now that we're plugged in. So before you put everything together, a real quick and easy way to make sure that everything's going to fit, or at least make sure you have the dimensions right, is you can put your 2 horizontal top and bottoms, just stack them down at the bottom, and then take one of these and stand it up and see if it's going to fit in here. And then you can see that fits. Take it down. Tight down there, but it fits. So we know when one of these is stacked on the bottom and top, it's still going to go in. Just a quick and easy way to check that before you get your whole box put together and then go to put it in and realize it doesn't fit. The other thing we did on some of the windows when they weren't so square is we actually put screws in the side to square up the box rather than try to use shims, because we could put the screws in ahead of time. So we measured the window and saw that, let's say, the corner of the frame was a 1/4 inch out this way. Then we would put a screw in here and bring it a 1/4 inch out to square up the frame that we were putting into the window. So that way we had the same spacing around that. And we'll be doing more windows, so we'll probably come across that at some point to show you. All right, so I just laid this out on the floor. I put all the sides I didn't cut that have the primer finish on facing me, because that's the side that's going to be exposed. Basically, so this is the bottom, that's the top, and then obviously the sides. The trick with this one is once I cut the 1.5 inch off the sides of the window, these pieces are within 1/8 of an inch, to make sure you either mark them or just pay close attention that you're using the right pieces in the right places. I just marked them top and bottom so I don't get them confused. I don't really have a fancy workbench or anything, so we're just going to build them on the ground. I got a Kreg jig right there. We're going to put some pocket screws in here, and then we'll build the trim around the box and put it in. Bring this over. Around. Any video and stuff? Mm-hmm. Okay. We're just going to center this. Stand it up. Gotta find my handy dandy drill. Somewhere around here. All right. Drill all our holes first. That. The side. Same thing over here. And this jig for this doesn't have to be dead center, as long as your board is flat on the bottom so you're not going in crooked, it's fine. So if y'all want to know what this is, it's just a Craig jig. They sell a lot of different ones. This one's pretty easy and mobile. It's kind of like squeeze it a few times, it'll tighten up, almost like a pair of vice grips, and makes it really easy to pre-drill for pocket screws. Works out nice. It has different measurements right here. So the wood we're using is 3/4, so that's where we have it set. You can go up to a 2x4 with this one, 1.5 inches, or down to a half. On. This floor is not perfectly level, and even this wood can be off a little bit. It's not perfect. So I'm just going to put a shim under here so that my face is perfectly even. That's more important than anything else. I'll slide that shim under there. Make sure let's see, right there. Make sure the face is nice and level, and then obviously make sure this side is nice and flush before you put your screws in. And there are a lot of better ways to hold this, but a lot of times when you're on a job, you don't have all your fancy tools with you. It's pretty even. So someone's probably gonna notice that I'm using a screw that's a little short. Usually you use the 1 1/4 inch screws for 3/4 to 3/4. Well, when you measure a lot of this stuff, it's just under 3/4, and what I found was happening is the 1 1/4 inch screws were just poking out the bottom, and it was annoying when I was trying to slide my casings in. So I switched to the 1 inch. It's holding it enough, and then once they're in the frame, we screw them in anyway, and they're not going anywhere. So that's why I'm doing that. All right, see if it goes in there. Or if we're way off. Hit that gravel up there just a little bit, but there. So bring this out. Make sure that's flush all the way around. Looks good. That will work. So now we're going to take it out, actually put the trim on, and then put it back in. On the trim, what we're going to do is we're actually going to mark the casing first. And you can use a combination square, and I don't have one on me, or it's probably lost here somewhere. So I just cut a 1/4 inch piece of that fingerboard joint to mark where the trim is going to set, and it makes it a lot easier to get your measurements for it. So I'll show you that real quick. Put this on the corner, flush with the edge. And you can make your reveal whatever you want. It doesn't have to be a 1/4 inch. You can make it 1/8, you can make it bigger. Doesn't really matter. It's up to you. Oops. There. And move it this way. Make it flush. Just mark it. And you can take it, mark a spot in the middle, just so you know where you're at. Really, when you have your corners, the rest is pretty easy to eyeball. But it doesn't hurt to have it marked. Middle. So the way we're going to measure the trim is we're going to cut a piece to 45, have that ready. We're going to put it right here on the edge of this, on the corner of our reveal mark. So that's where it's going to line up, right there. Line it up on this side. And then all you have to do is mark the bottom of this, where you want your cut to be. Right there. And just bring it up top. And then we're going to cut that to 45, and we can just go around and do that on all of them. That looks pretty good. Now we can tack them in with the brad nailer. And actually, we're gonna glue this trim together first, and then we'll tack it in with the brad nailer. It'll give us a lot tighter miters. So let's get that going. All right, so now what we're doing is we're gluing these miters together on the trim before we attach it to the box. And what I'm using, I found this on Amazon. It's called 2P10 adhesive, kind of like super glue in this bottle. You put this on one end and then you spray the other side with this activator. And once it goes on, it doesn't move. So you got to make sure you get it right the first time. So I'll go ahead and show you this. We already got one done. So what you'll do, we'll lift this end, put the glue on. Can you see that? The glue on. And this side we'll spray with the activator. Just be careful with the activator. It can discolor some things. So just go light and try not to get it all over your finished edge. Especially PVC, it'll turn it yellow. Just like that. Now, get these two corners. Line up your corners, and then put it together like that. Put it together tight, hold it, and that's it. Now that's tight, and that's on there. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, so just got done gluing this 10 seconds ago, and it's holding. So pretty good stuff, and definitely makes miters a lot easier than trying to do them on the wall. So what I'm gonna do now, lay this down, make sure I get it oriented correctly or it won't fit. This up here. And something's off. We got that the wrong way. There we go. That's better. All right, get my nailer. Whoops. Using 1-inch nails. That way we don't have we have a lot less of a chance of a nail poking out of any of our finished sides. And one tip I'll give you guys is if you're using a brad nailer, it doesn't matter if it's battery powered or air, hold it perpendicular to the side you're screwing and don't go parallel. The chances of a nail bowing out are a lot higher if you hold it this way. The nail's gonna probably go this way or that way. So just something to keep in mind. And a lot of times when you lay this trim on the box, it might not line up perfect until you start getting it nailed in as far as square goes, because being you have more surface area to work with, if your miters are perfect, this box may be off a tiny bit. You straighten the casing out to the trim, it'll generally be a lot more square that way. So you can check it with a speed square too and see, okay, is this one square or is that one square? And then adjust the other to it. But always find, you get, as long as nothing's way off, put one corner in and then just start working your way around. So pop in a nail right here, right here. I can come over here and look, and I'll just verify everything is somewhat close. If it's not, I'll kind of tweak it to make it as close as it can be. If there's a difference, like there's maybe a 32nd of an inch there, I'll cut it, I'll push it to where there's a 64th on each side, and then once everything's painted and my lines are gone, you would never know. So pop one in here. Now, just double check all my corners. They all look pretty good, so I can go around and nail it in. It'll usually bow right here, so you gotta tuck that in just to nail that. This one's doing the opposite. I'm gonna just push it out a little bit to keep that somewhat straight. Here, I have a line there that's bowing in just a little bit, so I'll push it out just to keep it from looking wonky. Tag in a few extra. Okay. Now, a window like this is pretty easy, but if you're working with a really big one, like this one over here that we did, I was by myself, so picking that up wasn't easy. I'll show you how I picked it up. I got inside the window frame like this. I got my hands under here so I wasn't putting a lot of pressure on the trim. As I picked it up, I was inside of it like that, and I literally just stepped out, let it rest against my leg, and I just stepped out like that and put it in the window so the trim wasn't dragging on the ground. So let's see if we can squeeze this puppy in here. It's going to be close to the wall with the trim on this side, but I measured it, supposedly it fit. So we'll see if I was right. I hope I was. I might not have been. If not, we're going to be screwed. We have to find a different window for this. And it's in there. It's a tight squeeze, but it is in there. Measured for the trim to just barely fit, and I really should have accounted for a little extra leeway. I had to fuss with it a little bit, but it's in now. So what I'll do now is I'll tack this in with some brad nails just to hold it in place where I want it, and we'll countersink some holes in here, put some screws in, and fill them, and then we'll put a strip back here to fill this gap all the way around, and that's it. Fill in these holes with some wood filler. A lot of times people use latex caulk, but it shrinks up. This tends to look better when it's done. Just using my finger to fill them in. Lightly sanded and then painted anyway, so it'll look good. Oops, just it out. A little bit more. It doesn't want to get in that crack. All right, so that's the bulk of the installation for the casing and the trim. We got all the holes filled in for now. We'll come back and hit those again, sand it down. And on the next video, what we'll work on is closing this gap. And if you look at it, it's pretty small here. It'd be pretty easy to do with some caulking. but at the bottom, it gets a lot wider. So on the next video, I'll show you how to do it with trim, and I'll also show you how to backfill it and fix that gap with caulking as well. We may use a product like this on the bottom and then caulk the rest, or we may do it in all trim. We'll probably try everything and just see how it looks so you can see all the different ways of doing that. Either way, it'll look good when it's done. So thanks for checking the video out. We'll see you on the next one.